Hey guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book University, Conan, issue number 12. This is going to be one of the final reviews that I do. Check out my podcast this Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for more details on that. This was a pretty good book. I'm not going to argue about how bad it was. It wasn't great. You know, it's not like, go out and get the... I'm not even going to recommend necessarily getting the trade paperback. But if you were to get this series, that's how I would recommend to get it personally. But if you want to get like issue number 1 of Conan the Barbarian, I can't blame you. I can't blame you. But at the end of the day, I think that for the most part, we saw that Jason Aaron's name was attached to this. And it was like, oh, he'd be perfect to write this book. And this is the problem with getting excited over a new book being announced and a new writer or a writer being attached to the book and an artist being attached to the book. Because you don't know if they're going to have one of their good days or not. You genuinely just really don't know. And I think that all 12 of these issues, which didn't have to be near, like this felt like all 12 of these issues should have been 8 issues. I feel like it just dragged ass. And that's a shame. That's generally a shame. That being said, art on here, man, even this cover, but even the art inside, oh man, this is an artist's nightmare and an artist's dream to be able to draw something like this. Let's talk about who made this book, and then we'll finish up talking about the book itself. Jason Aaron is the writer, Mahmoud Asrar on art, Matthew Wilson doing the colors, VC's Travis Lanham on letters, and Esad Ribic doing the cover art. Ron Garvey and Matthew Wilson does the variant cover. Anthony Gambino does the logo design, Jay Bowen the novella and additional logo, and yeah, Robert E. Howard created Conan. So there's like a lot of credits on this. Anyway, so we get to see the second meeting between Conan and the twins, and he's just so... I actually liked this a lot. Look, I'm kind of letting it go because the whole series to me is kind of a letdown. But I did like this meeting a lot because it really does emphasize who and what Conan is. If you ever stop, and you're a huge Conan fan, and you stop and you think about what would Conan be like if you met him, he's very uncaring. Because at the end of the day, he's very much understanding that I see you today. As soon as I walk away from you, there's no telling if you're alive. You could very well be murdered and killed by a wandering freaking dragon. Who knows? Because there's all sorts of beasties and ghouls and goblins out there and ghasts and stuff, that will eat your freaking face and everything else, and you'll disappear forever. Snake gods and you name it. So he is very much like, when he meets you and he befriends you, he's the best friend you'll ever have while he's there. Once he leaves, once you leave, you're dead to him because there's no guarantee that he's going to see you. And that was really exemplified in this. Conan was drunk as usual because, it's Conan. And he meets these psycho freaking kids again, and then they go off, and it's like, there's the subtle threats right there, and, oh, I know your name, what are you going to do about it? But, it is what it is, and there are bad guys everywhere. Conan saves these kids, but then again, he didn't really save them because, they could have probably saved themselves. Come on, right? But all in all, this was a really great example of who and what Conan actually is from beginning to end. As far as the end of the book, the final fight was awesome. I like the idea that at least in the previous issue and prior to that also, they did show that Conan did in fact actually die. So this was the life and death of Conan. It's kind of like the life and death and life again of Conan, right? So it wasn't a lie. So that right there, boom, you're saved. You're saved. You killed Conan. Congratulations. Is this the first person who killed Conan? Not really. There was a time he died 3 times in one show, one episode. Savage Sword of Conan. They just simply showed his deaths of the 4 possible futures, and that was a great book because they only showed the deaths of the first 3, and then when you see the 4th card, that's like, oh, fuck yeah, that's a Conan story. I think that was Savage Sword of Conan 18. I don't remember. Anyway, it was something like that. Go back and read them all. You're not going to hate yourself for reading them all. Anyway, in this particular case, this simply wasn't that good. This simply wasn't as good as that. That issue was like, yes, that's who Conan is. When Conan's laughing at your corpse, he just made you a corpse. He just killed you, fool. Because the card that you were going to show, that was his final death, his final future. Yeah, I'm just saying. Look. All I'm saying is that it is pretty telling when I'm too busy talking about another Conan book from, what, 2 decades ago? Something like that, as opposed to talking about this book that I'm actually reviewing. Because I'm talking about the whole thing. This was cool, Conan, you see his son, blah, 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 blah. I'm not arguing about it. Like, it wasn't bad. But when your name is Jason Aaron, and you just wrote an amazing 7-year Thor story that just, it brought in brand new fans, and you did what very few people have been able to do. You know, realistically, only one person has ever done before. Besides the creation of Thor, Walter Simonson was the only other person who ever brought new fans into Thor, like, genuinely. You know what I'm saying? Aside from like, oh, first appearance of the New Warriors is here. Yeah, that's great. It's worth $20 in Canada. You can get it anywhere, right? But Jason Aaron did something, different with Thor. He brought in swaths of new audiences. And that can't be overlooked. And the problem is that when you've got a book like that, with a character like that, and then you see a very similar character that he's going to, and everybody was anticipating this guy coming in, and the first people who are given a crack at this book is this guy right here. Yeah, there are going to be some expectations. And it's not our fault that that expectation was made. Neither is it our fault that it wasn't reached. They're just, yeah, I think that the pitch could have been better. And again, and this is something that just can't be Jason Aaron's fault. The idea of a story arc equals, 6 in some regard. That just can't be. That can't be. So you got 12 issues here, so they could put it out in a giant 6-issue or 12-issue omnibus, or 2 separate 6-issue volumes of a trade paperback. Nobody's demanding that. We're demanding the story that's supposed to be told, not the story that you want it to be told because it makes it easier for you to price your trade paperbacks. There's a lot of people making a lot of very valid complaints about the business practices and operations over at DC Comics. They're valid. But now let's talk about the biggest problem that, in my opinion, that Marvel has. This whole idea that it's got to be 6 issues or divisions of 6, multiples, I should say, of 6. It's kind of unacceptable. And that's a business practice that needs to stop because you're hurting the comic book business by doing that. The multiple variant covers aren't helping either. But for real, it's got to be 6 stories or, multiples of 6. This story could have and probably should have been 8 issues. Did not have to be 12. And that's a cheap marketing ploy to do. Anyway, guys, I'm done. You never know. This stuff might appear, I'm not joking when I say this. These are the kind of books that you're probably going to see in the dollar store in another year. So if you can wait, Anyway, guys, I'm out of here. Professor Bill, Comic Book University. Class dismissed.